On this episode of Beyond the Stats, Seattle is getting a new hockey team. Iowa is facing racial discrimination. Mike Tyson steps back into the ring. We predict what will happen with the NBA restart. But first, Washington, they have a team name.
This is Beyond the Stats with Zach and Tanner.
Tanner, so the Washington football team is, well, the Washington football team.
That's the name.
That's their team name for all of 2020. They should have a new name in 2021, but for the entirety of 2020, they will be called the Washington football team. The right move. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I'm going to reference your tweet from earlier this week. I think it was last night, but you said, are you crying?
No, I was just crying. No, not at all.
All right. So you said with all that's going on with Washington, they're just going with not trying to figure out a name makes the most sense right now. And I agree with you 100%, wholeheartedly. I mean, between them getting rid of their racist old name and between the report that came out last week from the Washington Post, it just makes a lot of sense. It creates an environment of, hey, we're just going to get through 2020 and we'll reset for the 2021 season. Let's do it.
And Zach, I mean, absolutely. When I said that, it's true. I mean, at this point, it's a safe bet. You know, we don't know. I mean, we've seen a couple articles throughout the last month or so that have kind of talked about potential names, at least, whether it be official, whether it be kind of opinions from other people. But, you know, as we've seen, we don't know what is going to be the best team name, because we've also heard they want to still stick with the Native American culture. Obviously, Redskins, you know, that's a name that's been, you know, deemed as racial, especially here recently. But you know, that I think it's like, as I said on my tweet, it's the right move. I mean, it's a safe name. You know, there's nothing that's wrong with it. It's very simple. And then also something very important to note, and I don't know if you were getting to it, but the uniform colors are going to stay the same. The only difference is obviously they're almost like, maybe this is a good comparison, like Alabama's uniforms, you know, no real logo on the side, you know, with the helmets, we see the numbers, and just kind of very basic uniforms. And same thing, good move. I mean, what are you going to do? Have Washington football team on the side of your helmet? I mean,
I'm all for it.
That would be entertaining. But, you know, I mean, again, as I said, I think it's the right move, especially with the state that they're in. I mean, a lot of people might agree, but it's probably the best move that they've made in the last month or two. So now we'll just see how their football team comes into it. But, you know, I appreciate with you, you know, saying that. I obviously put that out there for a reason. And no, yeah, smart move by Washington.
I can't argue against it at all. Like, the best move they made in probably the last 14. I mean, jokingly so, the last 14. Like, this might be the best move Dan Snyder's made as owner of the Washington football team. This might be his best move, outside of maybe hiring Ron Rivera. Ron Rivera was a good hire, so those are his. Everyone else is having a pretty terrible 2020, but to be completely honest, in terms of moves, he's probably doing better than anyone else in 2020.
And Zach, I found a quote from Terry Bateman, who is Washington's the new executive vice president and the chief marketing officer, when it comes to names. And exactly, it said, you know, there are a number of names people like. I probably had 1,000 names submitted. I'm getting long letters why one name is the right name for us. It's fun. It's funny, and it's fun. It's interesting. Everyone has an opinion, including his wife and his kids. But then kind of where he said is that, you know, people feel strongly about certain names. So kind of the idea, there have been lots of names for Washington, whether it be related to the Native American culture, whether it not be. But by the end of the day, they just could not agree upon a name. And it's the best move. You know, don't pick a name that you're not too sure about. And we don't know, but even if they do officially decide on a name, whether it be during the actual season or after the season, or if they even can, But, they're probably going to pick a name that there will be, hopefully, that lots of people like, but you're probably going to have a few people that won't like it. But, by that same time, in this state where they're at right now, it's the smart move. Don't agree upon a name that others can't get behind. And hopefully they'll make one either during the season or once the season's over.
Yes. I agree that this is a smart move as an interim name, official interim name. And I think they'll find a name that within the organization they can agree upon, because there will never be a name that everyone 100% across the board is going to like. Just because they've been the Redskins since 1933.
Mm-hmm.
And so changing the name is going to be, it's been controversial the entire time. So right move by them to not try to force a name, and to get a good name and do it right and take the time, because the way they've done it has been kind of long, and they decided to kind of change the name late, and training camp starting on time. So it's a smart move, particularly at this point in time. We're going to step aside and we're going to come back, and we're going to be talking about Seattle getting a new hockey team when we return. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. As always, I'm Tanner Camp, and as always with me, the one, the only, Mr. Zachariah Begley. Zach, yesterday a video was dropped, and it is now official. Seattle has a hockey team, and they are going to be called the Seattle Kraken. I've seen the video a couple times, and it was absolutely amazing. And Zach, I don't know if you've seen the video, if you've seen pictures of either the uniforms, the logo, or anything, but what can you tell us, or what were the first things that you noticed when you heard or saw about the Seattle Kraken?
Well, first things first. The marketing department, whoever's the head of their marketing department,
absolutely
raise right now, 100%.
Absolutely, absolutely,
great job. Like one of the best marketing departments in sports already, and they haven't even officially started yet. Second off, video was glorious. Video was amazing, like so good. Logo, great. Jerseys, clean, simple, good looking. The other thing is, who is moving to the Eastern Conference?
Yeah, very true.
Blackhawks make the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, I guess the only other team would be really that makes sense to me is the St. Louis Blues. But I think Blackhawks make the most sense out of everyone. I think that's the move. It'll be weird because the Blackhawks have been in the Western Conference for a long time, but now they're moved into the Eastern Conference, which I think makes the most sense. We'll see if that happens, but that just makes sense.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see those changes. But as you said, it would come down to Chicago or St. Louis, but the most sense would be Chicago. But again, we'll see as things get adjusted. They're still focusing on this upcoming season. And with that, again, obviously very important to note that the Seattle Kraken will not be a part of this restart here for the NHL. It'll be the next season. So again, really important to know, obviously they don't have the players yet, but still important for them that they dropped that logo. Zach, one thing that I found really interesting was that, and we've noticed this with a few teams, kind of not just in hockey, but in a lot of sports at a lot of levels, it was fan decided. The fans voted on the Kraken. Over 200,000 fans voted with over 1,000 different team names, but clearly by far this was the best. I would be very interested to find out other team names and also percentages, like if this was very clear, if it was a lot closer than we thought. But just looking at it, at least from that video standpoint, it's very clear that was the right move, and it makes so much sense for some reason. Again, the video is great. The graphic of showing the Seattle logo and the tentacle coming through, and then the red eye obviously symbolizing the Kraken. It just, everything about it is amazing. And I'm so excited to see them play once they get the first chance to play.
I hope they're as good as I really hope they're as good as the Las Vegas Golden Knights were when they started.
Oh yes, I would love
I mean,
that.
the Golden Knights made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. It'd be really hard because they're the only team to ever make the playoffs in their first year as an expansion team across all 4 major sports in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be really hard. I don't think it'd be really hard to repeat what the Golden Knights did. But I mean, just imagine.
And
like,
assuming no,
you turn on NBC to watch the Stanley Cup Final, and you're like, Kraken hockey here on NBC. I mean, just all the opportunities you can call. I mean, you could call the fan section Davy Jones' locker. I mean, there's just way too many opportunities here.
Absolutely, so much possibility. Imagine Western Conference, assuming Seattle, which I can't imagine why it would be Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you can't put them in Eastern Conference.
Western Conference Finals prediction? No, we'll see when their teams. But
You're right.
Logo, that'd be amazing. The Knights and the Kraken. But Zach, before we kind of wrap this up, I think one thing that's fantastic because Seattle, of course, over the last they've really won. They're still fighting. They want the Supersonics back. Of course, the Seahawks by far one of the best teams, I would argue, in the NFL, especially with Russell Wilson. Absolutely fantastic quarterback. Mariners,
right.
Kind of on and off. They've had great players over the years. Most notably, there's Ichiro. There's Felix Hernandez. But so some pretty good history. But I think what I really love is that Seattle is a very passionate fan base. I mean, on the Space Needle, of course, they're super well-known landmark. They already have a Seattle Kraken flag on, and this is from their official Twitter page, at NHL Seattle _ that fan base that they have is just so great. And it shows with a team like this. And I'm like I'm so excited to watch them play. And we look forward, obviously looking forward to the upcoming NHL restart here very soon, but also looking forward to some Seattle Kraken hockey.
Kraken hockey. What a name. What a name.
Well, that's going to wrap up this segment. But when we come back, Iowa is facing some racial discrimination. We'll talk about that when we come back. Once again, I'm Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley, and this is Beyond the Stats.
Here on Beyond the Stats, Zach Begley joined by the one, the only Tanner Camp. We're talking about recent reports about racial discrimination at the University of Iowa in their athletic department. There was a report released on Monday was when things started coming out. And so we're talking about that report. The report was done in 2019, but word got out earlier this week. So just to kind of start, it kind of started almost a month ago, actually, when former Iowa running back Akram Wadley released several allegations against the Iowa football program. And he is quoted as saying that playing for Iowa football was a living nightmare. And he detailed things like Kirk Ferentz withholding meals from him, Kirk Ferentz's son and offensive coordinator Brian Ferentz making racial jokes, things of that nature, like just terrible things from acute allegations that Akram Wadley said or wrote and then it came out earlier this week. Obviously, the 2019 internal report by Iowa's athletic program that there was a double standard. White athletes were 100% treated better, and just things, just multiple levels of improper and terrible things happening at Iowa. There's no place for what happened at Iowa. There's no place for racism in this country, at Iowa, in sports, in the world. And part of me is really sad about what happened. Part of me is really happy that this is coming out so we can address it. Tanner, you have a really great quote. Go for it.
Well, Zach, before I get into it, again, it's just so upsetting because especially when you think of Iowa football, usually a very well-respected program. Iowa basketball always produces great players, and it's just so upsetting to see that to this program. I've got some friends who are also, Iowa fans. I know they were really shocked by this. And as you said, it's upsetting that it's happening, but it's important to at least, especially in the time that we're in, where it's unacceptable. It doesn't matter from what age or wherever. It's not acceptable to make those kinds of comments. But as you said, I found a really, really powerful quote. I won't say good quote, and I guess in terms of it's upsetting with it, but one of the athletes had said, "I was told by my coach to change my hairstyle because it did not fit the Iowa culture. I can't be free. I feel like a slave to the system." And I mean, we talked about this a little bit before, but then the question becomes, what is the Iowa culture? And it's upsetting if you're an athlete, you're also a college student. You pick a campus or you pick a university or college because obviously you want to succeed in the athletic department wherever you're at. And then obviously in the classroom, but also just you want to be able to have your own opinion and feel like your own person. And this is just so upsetting because of a hairstyle. And as I watched a couple of the NBA scrimmages, a lot of players had their own hairstyle to express this, which I think is absolutely fantastic. We saw big players like CJ McCollum do that. We even saw a lot of other players. And it's just so upsetting that somebody has to even feel that way. So, Zach, I saw that quote and it really got to me because it's like no one should have to just a hairstyle for that matter. And
who cares what's on the top of your head? I mean,
absolutely, I agree.
That doesn't change the character of a person.
And as you said, there's just no place in that for sports. And to be honest, there's no place for that in general. Not even the jokes. Even if you say, "Well, I didn't mean it," there's no place for that in anywhere.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm glad that someone is doing this. Someone is saying something, and I was being held accountable. But it's unfortunate that in 2020, we still have to hold institutions accountable for things like this. And I was going to have to answer a lot of questions. There'll be changes coming to Iowa athletics in somehow. I don't know if people are going to get fired. I don't know if they're going to suspend people, but things will happen because Iowa can't not do something about this. And it starts at the top. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what they do, but we can't keep allowing this to happen anymore because clearly, if things like what you said and what Akram Wadley said, the quote that you got in Akram Wadley said, are being said by people, things need to change. Things just need to change. That's what needs to happen. That's what should happen. I hope that's what's going to happen. We'll see what happens in the future. I'm glad it's out in the open and we can solve the issue. We're going to step aside and we'll come back. We're going to talk about what is up with Mike Tyson and stepping back into the ring and what that kind of means when we return here on Beyond the Stats.
Here on Beyond the Stats with me, Zachariah Begley, as always, and I'm Tanner Camp, always there for you, no matter where you want to listen to us or watch us. But next up, we've got Mike Tyson has announced that he is going to be fighting Roy Jones Jr. in an 8-round exhibition on September 12th. There was a little broadcast about it. It was posted on that, and he talked about why. But, Zach, before we get into a few more details, or if you want to go into that, I mean, Mike Tyson, in terms of boxing, by far, I mean, nicknamed Iron Mike for a reason. He's one of the most ferocious fighters to ever step into the ring. So many notable traits about him. When you see the video or when you hear about Mike Tyson stepping back into the ring, what are your kind of initial thoughts? Recently, there have been a lot of videos showing him doing workouts, and I'm just going to say he looks like he's still in absolutely fantastic shape. But, Zach, just go ahead, dive right in when you kind of hear about Mike Tyson stepping back into the ring.
Well, first things first, I'm glad he's fighting someone like Roy Jones Jr. instead of trying to fight like Manny Pacquiao because, I mean, he's 54 and your body does slow down. It's just the physical truth of it.
It's a matter
like
of that, yeah.
I have like fight if you want to fight, but but he's fighting Roy Jones Jr. who's 51 to Mike Tyson's 54, so only a 3-year difference in age. It's going to be entertaining. Out of anything else, it's going to be entertaining. It'll be interesting to see how he fights now at 54 than he did when he was 34, even 24. Because, I mean, what most people think of when they think of Mike Tyson is that big left hook. You know, I mean, he could throw a punch about as hard as anyone in boxing history. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that is still there just because he's 54 instead of 34. And yeah, he's in great shape, but it won't be the same. The other thing I think is really interesting is the undercard. Nate Robinson versus Jake Paul. Former NBA player and 4-time junk champion, Nate Robinson. Also former Washington University football defensive back versus internet sensation might not be the right word. Internet personality, Jake Paul. I mean, some of this it's an exhibition match, and some of it's publicity. You got Roy Jones Jr. and Mike Tyson, 2 pretty big names in boxing. And then to kind of get the young people, it's Jake Paul and Nate Robinson. Like that kind of seems what the undercard is for, is to draw in some younger audiences, because everyone like 16 and under knows who Jake Paul is, for better or for worse. So it'll be interesting to see what the fight is and how the fight happens. But it's interesting, and I think I'll probably tune in.
And Zach, also to clarify that the last time that Tyson fought was actually 15 years ago against Kevin McBride, and Kevin McBride stopped Tyson in 6 rounds. But then he was on First Take on ESPN, and he actually had the quote as to why he came back, which I was completely interested in, because, you know, why at this age and why now? There was videos a while ago showing that he could have done this, but the quote is, the reason why he wants to is, and in his quote, it's because I can do it, and I believe other people believe they can do it too. Just because we're 54, it doesn't mean that we have to start a new career and our lives are totally over. Not when you feel as beautiful as I do, and I'm sure that other people feel the same way. Zach, I think it's a great quote. You know, obviously Tyson in his mid-50s, still, again, in really good shape. And, you know, I kind of...
really good shape.
And we don't know if this is kind of... I don't think it's teasing towards a comeback in his career. I don't think. Obviously, we never know. Very unlikely, but props to him. He wants to show that even at his age, he can still compete at a really good level. And I absolutely have the utmost respect for him for that. It's showing that, you know, when it comes to age and everything, it doesn't matter. He can still compete at a really good level. Again, by far one of the heaviest and strongest hitters, as you said, that left hook, probably one of the strongest in the history of boxing. And, you know, as you said, I am really interested in seeing that. But I really like the quote. It's just showing you, just because I'm this age doesn't mean that I can't still fight with the young guns.
Yeah, he's saying that, but he's also picking someone like Roy Jones Jr. who's in the same age range. So I think, he's 54. He's older. He's more mature. That's just what happens. So it'll be interesting to see how he fights now versus how he fought even 15 years ago. When I hope he doesn't try to bite off another ear too. I really hope that doesn't happen. It's kind of a shot at him, not gonna lie, but I don't think that will happen. But you know, I'm excited to watch Mike Tyson fight. 15 years ago, I was 6 and was not watching boxing. So I'll be excited to get to see my first live Mike Tyson fight.
And you knew that as much as we tried to avoid it, you knew you couldn't talk about Mike Tyson without, of course.
Yeah.
You had to.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, I'm really excited for it. Hope he does. Well, hope it's a great fight, obviously, aside from anything. And, you know, best of luck to both Mike Tyson and to Roy Jones Jr. We're going to wrap this segment up. And when we come back with the NBA restart about a week away, we're going to be making some predictions and looking ahead at that. Once again, Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley. This is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. I blanked. Hold up. I blanked on my own name. All right. I was like, what's my name?
Well, this is great. Ready?
All right.
Tell me when
Take two. I'm
And
recording still.
NBA standings and predictions and stuff. Zach Begley starts and closing take number 2 on you.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. Zachariah Begley, joined by Tanner Camp. We're talking about the NBA restart and making some predictions about what's going to happen with the full NBA season, as well as and who's going to be champions, things of that nature. Tanner, why don't we start with you?
All right, Zach. Well, but before we dive in, just to quickly remind people. So Thursday, July 30th, right now they're just doing scrimmage games to kind of get back to the feel. I've also watched a couple of the games, and honestly, if it was just regular scrimmage games, I don't know if the intensity would be as much. I've been very impressed so far with the competitive level. So this is good. That means, players are really eager to get back in. So again, Thursday, July 30th, are official games. So this is part of the kind of play-in type format to kind of get final seedings. Certain teams like the Lakers, Clippers, Bucks, Raptors are guaranteed, but just looking at that. But again, July 30th, the first game will be the Utah Jazz going up against the New Orleans Pelicans. And personally, the big anticipated one are the Clippers and the Lakers. So that'll be exciting. But kind of looking at the standings, at the top, you got your teams like the Lakers, Clippers, the Nuggets. For the East, again, the Bucks, Raptors, and the Celtics. But in terms of predictions, okay, I'm going to start with the Eastern Conference. I got to go with the Bucks. I think Giannis, probably Eastern Conference for sure, the most dominant player, and maybe out. I don't know, because LeBron is so good, but Giannis, dude, is kind of unfit. So Bucks for sure. I think obviously as a Pacers fan, I would say that it depends. If they go against the Heat, that'll be interesting. But I think I'm going to go Bucks and Raptors. I think that matchup is just really, really good. The two best teams, the Raptors, even without Kawhi, still by far a dominant force in the Eastern Conference, due in large part to Kyle Lowry and Pascal Siakam. And then in terms of who wins out of that, I'm going with the Bucks. I think Giannis has a chip on his shoulder from them because they knew. I think they were the better team, but the Raptors executed their game plan better, and they also had Kawhi, arguably one of the best defenders in the NBA. I think the Bucks are going to get that one. I'm even going to go 6. I think Giannis is going to have a huge chip on his shoulder. I think, and he wants to beat Toronto because he is upset with their loss last year, and he wants to get the Bucks a championship. So out of the East, I'm going Bucks and Raptors, with the Bucks winning in 6. And for the Western Conference, who knows? Maybe we'll see Jokic more at the point for Denver, since they have very limited bigs.
Point God Jokic.
We could see the Thunder. They've been kind of a surprise team in the West, being 5th, even above the Rockets, who I personally didn't think they would do well. But Chris Paul has absolutely exploded, and Steven Adams, a very consistent player, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah.
Obviously, that 8 spot, it'll be lots of fun to watch because you got the Grizzlies, you got the Trailblazers, you got the Pelicans,
even the Suns.
You got the Suns. You still got a lot of teams fighting for that spot, so that'll be fun. But my prediction for the West, I mean, again, as stereotypical as it is, I think you got to go Lakers, Clippers. I mean, LeBron and AD, probably the best combination, maybe in the NBA. They're just so dominant. Both can score almost, it seems like, whenever they want. And I got to go with the Clippers. I think Kawhi knows how to win, even if when he was at the Raptors, by far their best player, but he'll do whatever it takes to win. And if it means he has to, drop back a couple points, he'll do whatever it takes to win. So I'm going Lakers, Clippers. And then I think, just based off of Kawhi's experience, I'm going Clippers, but it'll go to 7. I think it will go 7 for sure. So I got the Clippers beating the Lakers in 7. And then between the Clippers and the Bucks, that's where it gets interesting because you got a rematch between Kawhi and Giannis. And I think I'm going to go with the Clippers with this one. I think Kawhi's playoff experience is going to really help that Clippers team. Paul George being alongside him, their chemistry's been amazing. And then you got players like Sweet Lou Williams, arguably one of the best the best 6th man in the NBA for sure. Montrezl Harrell off the bench. I mean, I'm going with the Clippers, but same. I'm going 7 on that one. But obviously won't be surprised if the Bucks win. But my prediction is that the LA Clippers will beat the Milwaukee Bucks in 7 games.
All right. Yours is very similar to me.
Okay.
But I go Celtics Bucks in the Eastern Conference final.
Oh.
And then I I I'm going to go Bucks because Giannis is the best player in that series, but in 7 games,
Yes.
because Chris Middleton didn't play basketball for 4 months, or he didn't play during the entire time off. Didn't play. And so he's going to come back and he's going to be rusty. And he wasn't great in the playoffs last year. He was good in the playoffs 2 years ago, but last year he wasn't very good in the playoffs. And especially in the Eastern Conference Finals. And so I say Celtics because Celtics just have, I mean, they have 3 wings that are very good. Gordon Hayward, former All-Star, still have Jason Tatum, still have Jaylen Brown, still have Kemba Walker.
Yep.
They still have Marcus Smart. Like, they just have a lot of players that can kind of mix and match to get better matchups. And then, so I think they beat the rep. I think it's Celtics and Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think the Bucks win in 7.
Yep, I can go with that.
And then on the Western side, I also have Lakers and Clippers.
Yep.
And then I give it to the Clippers in actually 7 because those series were close. But the only reason I give it to the Clippers is because the Lakers are missing Rondo and Avery Bradley. Avery Bradley was a starter. Rondo was a key role player. And Rondo in the playoffs is insane. Like, Rondo's
with the Celtics. Yep.
And with the Bulls. He basically, like, and with the Pelicans too. I mean, him and Drew Holiday in that first round series a couple years ago, like with Anthony Davis, like, Rondo doesn't play very much regular season, doesn't play great in the regular season anymore, but Rondo in the playoffs is insane. Playoff Rondo is insane. And to lose him and to lose Avery Bradley, 2 of their best perimeter defenders, a point guard in Rondo, and a capable perimeter wing defender in Avery Bradley. I mean, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt a lot.
They do have Danny Green, though, so very fortunate.
They do have Danny Green,
but
so they still have someone.
Still need a backup role for that, but still, so they got someone. They just need to find the next piece. But yeah, I understand that. And
then it's Clippers, Bucks, and I have to go with Clippers, but not because of Kawhi. Particularly,
really?
I mean, yes, Kawhi, but not particularly. Kawhi is not the reason I pick, because I think Giannis and Kawhi cancel each other out in a lot of ways. I think that's, and then you're looking at Paul George and Chris Middleton. Paul George, I think, is better than Chris Middleton, but it's the bench. The Clippers have 2 players off the bench that's scoring 18 plus a game off the bench, and Harrell and Lou Williams. And the Bucks have no one scoring 18 points a game off the bench. You can't not replace what Harrell and Lou Williams are doing off the bench. I mean, that's invaluable. So I have to go Clippers in 7 over the Bucks because the Clippers have a deeper team.
That makes sense. So kind of 2 different reasons, but same matchup. And I think one thing, Zach, that will be a key factor is, remember, the standings are where they are now. Now, those could change by the time we play those games. I mean, heck, who knows? It could be this. I don't think it'll happen, but this drastic where the Lakers might not be the top seed. Again, very unlikely, but
very unlikely. They're ahead enough. I don't see that happening.
But you know
possible.
Where I'm trying to go with that in terms of things changing. But Zach, I know as a huge NBA and basketball fan, I'm really excited for it. Again, based on the scrimmages, it looks like it's going to be competitive and teams trying to fight for that spot in the East. And most likely the Wizards, Magic, and Nets. And then, of course, for the West, the Suns, Spurs, Canes, Pelicans, Blazers, and Grizzlies. Those will be the fun games to watch. And once playoff time comes, that's when it's going to get exciting. But yeah, no, I'm super, super pumped for the season. And I'll be watching as many games as I can.
Yeah, I'm ready for playoff basketball. It's here. I'm ready for it. I'm ready to give Kawhi his 3rd championship, 2nd in a row. I can't think of another player, like star player, who's won 2 in a row with 2 different teams. Because, I mean, we all know Patrick McCaw has done that, but Patrick McCaw, for all intents and purposes, doesn't play much. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'm really excited for some some basketball, especially playoff basketball. Playoff sports are infinitely better than regular season sports. And I mean, that's obvious, but still. That's all we have for you today. You can follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Beyond the Stats. You can find our podcast at most major podcasting sites at Beyond the Stats. And of course, on YouTube at Beyond the Stats. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Yeah, you don't want to miss any content.
No, you do not. Lots of great stuff with all different aspects. So until next time, once again, along with Zachariah Begley, I'm Tanner Camp, and this has been Beyond the Stats.